So now, as you know, this is a part of the sovereignty series. And I felt that the most important thing was, because when you're dealing with sovereignty, first of all, you have to know what sovereignty really means. It probably doesn't mean exactly what you think. So it's important to know. That would be the difference, because now it's become a buzzword. People say sovereignty, we need our sovereignty. And it's just becoming the word. So we started to define what sovereignty is, but we need to basically make sure that we're putting this into the proper perspective once more if we're going to continue on this sovereign build. And it's one that when you really boil everything down around this word, what it has most to do with, especially in ancient times, was about protection. A sovereign actually meant someone that was responsible for taking care of others and everyone else, a whole village, a whole tribe, a family. And so more importantly, and very specifically, it was actually that they could protect everybody and keep everybody safe. So I mentioned earlier that the purest level of protection is wisdom, because you know certain things that allows you to navigate through the space for you and those that choose to have you responsible for them. And you're always ahead of the curve. Something be taking place and you're only benefiting off of it because you already know what's going to happen. You already know the algorithm. That's a sovereign. So we have to think then that there would be then two different types of protection. There would be this external protection, right? Well, so first we mentioned the internal protection. The internal protection is having this wisdom. Even in a family, if we want to make this very basic, in a family that is very close knit, there's a skill, there's a trade, what we call I always forget the word every single time, but it's the skill or the trade that the family knows. They call it trade secrets. There it is again. Trade secrets, something that you can do, whether you can dye fabric, whether you can grow corn. There's something that your family can do that creates the value within your family that allows you to come to the farm with everybody else, because that's also where the sovereigns are. You get a chance to sit at the table with everybody else, like, okay, well, I grow this and I grow that. Let's make an exchange here. So very directly, there is that internal. So you're working on yourself, you're developing something, and then that comes to the betterment of everyone because it's actually at the same level, at least, of what everybody else is producing. That's actually what a sovereign is really about. So we're going to get into that a little bit more here in a moment, but there's the external one, and the external one just has to do with killing everybody. It has to do with who is the most strongest and the most threatening. You got to realize that the other level of protection, if it's not going to be wisdom, if it's not going to be staying ahead, that's why you really only have two choices here. Some people always say, well, Sevan, I need to understand how to protect myself, right? And the external one is definitely the bum route. Like the entire history of humanity is mostly full of the external applications of protection, which end up in warfare. So it's this internal application that we're looking for. So this professional technology then is the secrets of getting to the perfected states and the instructions on the journey very directly. Some will travel lateral, basically some will travel horizontal and not vertical, as we explained before. They will go on further in their journey, collecting lots of wisdom, lots of knowledge, if you may, but never really applying it. They will grow old and they will never see the benefits of what it is itself because they were speculating. While there are others that will go vertical. They will crystallize the knowledge. They will refine themselves with that knowledge, meaning that they'll actually apply that knowledge to themselves. And it would be as to them as if things were getting clearer and clearer, as if they were drawing closer and closer to something that was the ultimate. So these are the benchmarks. So here's a recap, because here's where we're going to begin this evening. is just a brief recap on our first sovereign presentation here on YouTube. There was an awareness that in this sovereign field, because we're dealing in something that is really undefined, it has to become defined. There must be some type of measurement. So very specifically, we talked about that first, I'll have to do this in order. First, we talked about that your mind is sovereign, is in a sovereign trust, that this mind that you have is actually a co-creative conscious mind. It has an extremely high value. And let's say the creators of the mind, if you may, decided that it could not be owned by anyone. So it is in a trust. So even if you get tricked into believing that something can own your mind, it would be a trick indeed. And you can go on with that until you wake up out of the trick. And then just like that, you can be released from the trick. So if something is saying, well, I have you, I owned you, you did this ritual, you did all of this, that's the jokers, if you may, trying to convince your mind that they have you. But none of that can be the case, because we've discovered unequivocally that the mind in itself does not belong to anything. So that's why the term is, if you free your mind, then the rest will follow. That's why wherever you think you're at, that's where you're at. When you're having a great time in your mind, you're having a great time. When you're having a horrible time, it's all got to be processed through the mind. And there's a reason for this, because your mind is basically the ultimate control point of the whole thing. You can always retreat to your mind. And so if you know how to control your mind, then you can always be in a pleasant vista, no matter what's going on around you. Now, of course, there's a million excuses behind that, or why some person is not in the best state of mind, but it's for the record that it's because the mind actually belongs to no one. So we went on, and even coming from the mind, since let's say if that's some type of origin point, we know there's still a physicality. So the physicality comes into play. And when the physicality comes into play, because it's manifested from the mind, in order for someone to even say that they own the physicality, they have to go through this entire process. And we elaborated on that in our last sovereign build. And that process was also taking measurements, even creating, actually, personally, first, creating a unique measurement system that is unique to you and the nation of your people, because the measurement system has every single thing to do with the energy and the power that is being evoked. So we see right now in the world, we have the royal cubic system, right? This is the system that was used in Kemet, or what you're calling Egypt. They also use the digit then. So if you're thinking that technology is new, think again. They were using what's called digits. And that word actually means grain. It actually also refers to your fingers, because you plant seeds, you create things. And this digit is the digital side of the reality. It's the ability to create things in a reality that actually in itself is quantum. It's only solid because the mind agrees that it's solid. That's why when you take any substance and the mind stops focusing on the solidity of this reality, it stops becoming solid. When you go to sleep, the reality goes altogether goes away, and you're put into another reality. So again, these things seem very basic, but they are that renewal and that confirmation, like check. Okay, we good with that. Check. Now we understand this. The mind is a sovereign property. You're just working to get control of this. If you can get control of this, then you got everything. Some people say, well, that sounds so easy. Try not to think for 1 minute and see how easy it is. And then you'll realize, Samson, the Philistines are upon you, meaning that you have giants in your mind at this point, big ideas constantly bothering you and telling you, who you are or who you're not, what you're supposed to become. Right. So being able to still your mind, literally make it still, stop it, is the power.